Before starting with app registrations, let's touch base with what is Microsoft Azure and uh, what is identity and access management in Azure AD. So basically, Microsoft Azure is a Microsoft's, as you know, cloud offering, cloud computing platform that gives us a range of services and tools to choose from and work on cloud and using the licenses which we can buy from them, and depending on the license we can access various tools and services in Microsoft Azure. So in today's session we'll be discussing more briefly on the Azure Active Directory side. So in Active Directory, we'll be focusing more on identity and access management. So the two major aspects of this identity and access management are app registrations and SPNs. So we'll go ahead with app registrations for today, but these two things goes hand in hand. Like if we create an app registration, service principal name is automatically created in the background. But before going to that part, let's try to understand what app registration is. So app registrations. So as we know, app registration. So Microsoft Cloud is a service provider, and if you want to like access the resources in the cloud, we want some identity. Like whenever we have, for example, Gmail account. So while using the Gmail Google account, so we usually sign in into the account, and then we get the capabilities like sending email, receiving email from Google. So likewise, in to view the resources from Microsoft Cloud, we need to have some sort of identity. So we get that while registering the application. So it's a part in Azure Active Directory, as we can see on the screen. So when we go into Azure Active Directory, we get a list of services, like we can manage users groups, and one part of it is app registrations. So it is used basically for authenticating the application and to use the capabilities of cloud via the apps, via the APIs such as the MS Graph, the Azure AD Graph, which will be deprecating soon. But that's a high level thing of what app registrations are. And yeah, you can think of app registrations as like three major parts are there in app registrations. One is creating an app registration. It will be used for your authentication, like proving who you are to access the services. Second one is like uh, creating secrets and certificates. So it will be like your passwords to it will be your like passwords to enter the cloud and then access the resources. And third one is like granting the API permission. So to view the data in the cloud, you need permissions. So we can give permission to this app, and by using this app we can then access the resources like from O365. Then we have Microsoft Graph, which we can list the number of users in our cloud, then groups present in the cloud. We can get all the information by using this app registrations and the permissions assigned to this app registration. So we'll have a look at it later in the demo part of this session. So that's a high level introduction of app registrations. Next part is, as we discussed, like
Tejas, sorry to interrupt,
yes,
but am I the only one who is getting background noise from Tejas, or in
Even I
anyone else
am
is getting?
even I am
you're
getting.
getting
Yeah.
No,
okay.
yeah.
Let me know if
Actually, that is the essence of Tejas, right? The mic cannot handle the awesomeness of Tejas. That's why it's doing that.
is
Okay.
it still there or it's
No,
good
no,
now.
no.
I
It's
know.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Okay.
Okay.
also
Sorry.
Tejas, are we going to see this practically? Like,
Yeah, sure, sure, sure.
oh, okay, all right, thank you.
The
Glimpse of it.
practicals will be in the how to, not the what is session, the how to session.
Okay,
There will be a
cool.
basic practical where you'll get
Hmm.
an assignment.
All right.
I can show you the overview, but for creating the resources and assigning permissions, yeah, that will be a step by step, what you can say,
Okay.
exercise for people, right?
Yeah, the exercise is for you. You will have to figure out how to create it, and after this session, you will definitely know how to create that app registration.
All right. Perfect.
So as I was discussing in the previous slide, like app registrations, three aspects. One is authentication, second is authorization, and in authentication, we have when we register the app, as we can see here, we get the app ID, which is we can compare it with our username, and then to get the password, there are two options. Either we upload a certificate or we create a client secret. So both ways will be fine. So it's depends on the user and business case you are implementing. So this will give you your password to authenticate against the Microsoft Cloud. So because we can see on the left hand side using certificate, this allows you to link the certificate to the service principal or and yes, and to it will give a thumbprint. This thumbprint I have hidden it for now, but this will be your password. And in the second way was is to create a client secret. Okay, we can see it practically later, but good to have it in your mind. Like we can go through both the ways as per our requirements. Both ways allows us to authenticate against Microsoft Azure. Then granting API permissions. So we have created an app, we have the certificates and secrets. Now the third part is we want to access the resources in the cloud. So for that we have to give the permissions to our app so that we can it can read the data, it can write the data. So for that part in for that to serve that purpose, on the left hand side of the screen we can see a blade, and under that blade we can see app permissions. So when we click the app permissions, we get an option to add the permissions. So this has a list of permissions like Microsoft Office, then Microsoft Graph, and Dynamics 365, and list of services we can use. And it can also we can also like we can also like divide the permissions, like tune the permissions for some apps. So if you want someone to give only read permissions, then we can assign that app or that SPN only a read permission. And if we want to have someone write permissions, then to that app we can give the right permission and share the credentials with the one which requires the access to it. So in this way we can give the permissions to the app to access the resources. So this was three aspects of the app registrations. So think we can go through the portal, and I can quickly show the uh, Active Directory and app registrations part to you so that you can understand it better. So going to the Azure portal. Okay, so this will be our home screen of Microsoft Azure, and under it we'll go to Active Directory, which is the identity and access management service of Microsoft Cloud. And as we were discussing, so in the left hand blade we get an option to manage users groups and all that thing. So for today as we are concentrating on this app registrations, so let's see the app registrations part. So this is the dashboard we get. We get the list of apps that we have registered in our portal, and we get a client ID, and another thing is a tenant ID. So I'm opening one of the app which I created earlier. So over here we can see all the details of our app, like the application ID, object ID. This is the SPN, and the tenant ID of my app. And again on the left hand side, you can manage the secrets and certificates. So for this part, I had entered a certificate, but you can also create a client secret. It's very easy to create one and set the expiry date. But there is one catch here. So when you create a client secret, the client secret is displayed only once to you, and when you hit the back button, it gets like it gets encrypted. So if you want to create a client secret, then make sure you paste the secret and save it somewhere in your computer. So that's the thing. And then the API permissions for the app to access the resources. So what you can do is you can add a permission, and here are the list of permissions that you can give your app, like to read the data from Azure storage, or then O365 keyword data number of services. Most common is the Microsoft Graph. It will let you to do a number of things like read applications, even read the users' calendars, then Teams meetings and stuff like that. So you can go through this all the permissions. So in my case, I wanted to read all the users in my cloud and then create users also using PowerShell. So for that purpose, I gave this directory read all and this number of permissions to my app. So yeah, this is the high level overview of registering your apps in Microsoft Azure Active Directory. And also, one important thing to discuss over here is like when we create an app. So this I registered an app using this portal, and let's remember this application ID. So it is 9 here. And then if I go back to enterprise applications, we can see the same application is been created, but this is a SPN. So SPN will get automatically created in the background. So we haven't created it, right? So it automatically got created with the same application ID. Let it roll. Yeah, with the same application ID, but with the different object ID. So why it happened is like in this tenant, I created an app, and this app got created. This app created an SPN in the background, and when if you and let's say if I want to share this application with Manu, so what will happen is if Manu consents, like whenever we use log into a new service or whenever we share something, uh, it asks us for giving the consent, like giving the permission to create an app on my uh, Active Directory. So when Manu, if I share my app and if Manu gives a consent to create an app on his cloud, so an app SPN will get created on Manu's side. So what will the that SPN, all the permissions and all the credentials, Manu will be able to use all the details of the app to access the cloud uh, using that SPN. So that is one thing, and we can discuss more on SPNs in the next session that will be taken by Manu. I think tomorrow or day later. But just to
Yeah,
keep in
tomorrow.
mind, like what
Tomorrow.
yeah. So a high level information on SPN. So basically, it goes hand in hand. Like most of the things are same, but just few minor uh, changes are there. So let's go back to the app registrations.
So
Uh,
Tejas, I have a doubt.
yes, please.
So we have to create a web application in Azure, and that app has to be registered from this, which you're showing, right?
Correct, correct.
Okay. So first we create an app, and that app should get automatically populated amongst the list, and we have to just add that or register that app with Azure, right?
Uh, so this app is basically, I will show you. So it is used for also authentication. If let's not compare this with the practical apps which we use. So in what we can do in Azure is like register an app over here, empty app, then use its credentials basically. So its username and password, and from using some other services like PowerShell or some other scripting tools, we can log in into this cloud like without entering our passwords and like tejas.patil@rapidcircle.com and my actual password. I can use this application ID of this app and the secrets like these passwords to enter into my this cloud, and also from this I will get the permissions. The permissions are defined in this apps API permission. So I'll only be able to use only be able to use these many services and not all the uh, things which are provided by Azure. So this is one of the level of implementing a security or access control to the users. So the question you asked was like creating an app. For that, I think if I go here and here is an integration, sorry, quick start. And we can also actually build applications like the real life applications, either web application, mobile application. We can either select a platform, and this will be a platform as a service. Like it will give you a platform, and we can then develop apps. So I don't have a clear knowledge about like if the app is already built, we can just
No, no.
register.
So this bit is just your authentication part,
Correct. Yeah.
where everything happens as app manifest, right? So it is what permissions your application has and what resources have you granted your application permissions to. But if you're building an app, where you write code in Python and stuff like that, that happens. You can do that via a function app. There are different services in Azure Active Directory that will provide that resource for you. For example, you can have a web app. You can create multiple different apps. There are app service plans.
Hmm.
Uh, could you type in app service plan in
Yes,
desktop start?
I have one created. I can show you.
Okay. So you can create those, and that is where your code gets inserted. But
So
what you use for authentication, that's your registered application, things like that. So at different stages of creating an application, but one part is your SPN and your app registration.
Okay, so this registration is an important step. Like once you have created an
Yeah,
application, we have to register it. Only then we can use all the services, or
yeah,
we
correct.
can authenticate using that. Okay, cool.
Authentication happens using app registration and
Hmm.
yeah, using app registration, wherein I give my SPN access to some resources. For example, different graph APIs. Right? If it's an SPN, technically it's best if you give it access to only those API permissions. But your
Hmm.
application, the hard code that you write, in Python, in C++, C Sharp, or .NET, whatever you write that code in, that will be in your app service plan. So your app service plan is something different where you can create an app service plan, you can add your code over there, and you can do stuff with that application or that code.
Okay, okay. So if we want to host our application in Microsoft, Azure is the only option.
Yeah, because
Okay,
Microsoft only provides you with one platform, right?
correct, correct.
But you can host it in multiple things like Alibaba Cloud, AWS, or Google, right? But Microsoft would recommend, and I would hope they recommend, it's Azure. So in this training, we're talking about Azure Active Directory. Active Directory is an IAM platform, identity management. So you would use
Hmm.
Azure Active Directory to authenticate against all your applications that live in Azure, live in on-premises, live in third-party environments as well. So
Okay, got it.
if you have applications created in Google or
Hmm.
anything like that, you can use Azure Active Directory as your authentication mechanism. So
Hmm.
single sign-on, everything will happen. We can learn about app service plans in other sessions, but for this one, since it's 101, I don't want to cram you all with a lot of information. Let's keep this simple.
Okay, all right, got it.
yep.
Go ahead.
So that was the app registrations part, and if I think if let's go back to
I'll
the
stop the recording.
PPT. So we saw like the portal, then creating certificates, and then why API permissions are required for our applications to grant access to the resources. Then this discuss this example like creating an app in one of the tenant, and then if we share this with other tenants, like if Manus and clients, then SPN will get created, and that SPN will have the app manifest. So the app will be a global instance, like it will be present only in my tenant, but Manu and Clint, they will be able to access uh, the credentials in the app and all the permissions via the SPN that will be get created on their tenants once I share the app and once they consent of creating the app. So like that, the process is. And yeah, the few of the reference materials like you can go through if you want to learn more about on Azure AD and then service principles. This one is a good link, so if you can refer this, it explains the differences of service principles and app registrations, and then how you can create a certificate or secret in and upload it in uh, app in the Azure app. So yeah,
Okay,
that's
okay. And what all things do we usually store in the client secrets?
in the
It has an
clients. It has
it
a
has an
key.
expiration date, right?
Correct, correct. So let me go into the portal and let me show you. So in this app, we have this option, and if we choose client secret, and this description is optional, can test and recommended 6 months ad. You can start. It gives it automatically creates a key and a secret for us. So it's important if we to copy this key and this secret because since when I refresh this or when I come later, it gets like encrypted. So so you can either then if you have some third party some tools like PowerShell, and if you want to query the data you have on your cloud, so you can enter your client secrets over here and application ID over here, and then you can get a list of users or do stuff with the data you want. So
Okay. Can you
that
double
will be
click on the test? So
this
once
is
we are
it.
saving,
This is only thing we can do. It's only shows you the secrets. Can't
okay.
you can't open it or do anything with us, but if you can create number of secrets as per your requirement. So it's like recommended you copy it at the first step when you see, because at the next time you come over here, it gets encrypted. And yeah,
Oh, okay.
cool. Yeah. Anyone have some other questions can
One
discuss.
more question I have. Can this registration be done using PowerShell too?
Correct, correct. So in PowerShell also you can register your app. You can find the code online, but you can register your app. So for that, once you have to connect to your Azure account. So I have some sample code over here. So you can see if you use the first option, which is just Azure AD Connect, no credentials, nothing. So what will happen is it gives an option to like enter a username and password. The second option is like passing the credentials. So this tenant ID, app ID, we got it from your our app. So in the app overview, we have this app ID, tenant ID, and then from client secrets and certificates, we got the password. If we enter that and try to connect to our Azure account, let's run this line of code and it says it's connected. It gives our description of what it is, and like this, we can bypass the entering our credentials and then work directly in the cloud. And if you say if your requirement is like connecting to the Graph API and getting the list of users, what you can do is you can enter this line of code. Then it says welcome to Microsoft Graph, and if you want to check the number of users you have in your cloud directly from PowerShell rather than entering in the portal, you can execute this line of code and boom, it will give you the users that are present in your cloud. You can cross check it in the portal later, but this is one of the way. If you don't have access to the portal and if you have the credentials, then you can work on PowerShell and you can add even add users or groups or anything you want to. So yeah, think it answers your question, Piyush.
So by using the connect MG graph, putting the
Mhm.
tenant ID and the app ID, registration is done.
And this is not for registration. This is for connecting your registered app to your cloud. So
No, no.
registration, the line of
Uh-huh.
code will be different. You can be able to register your app using PowerShell, but yeah, you have to write a code to do that.
Okay, okay.
The PowerShell script to register your app from your. PowerShell. So there will be a script available. So you run that script, and I think uh, you will be able
Okay,
to
okay.
register your app.
So, Clint, have you ever did this? Have you registered using PowerShell?
Yeah, you can register app, you can grant permissions, you can do a lot of things using PowerShell. You can do the entire thing using PowerShell.
Yeah,
But what Tejas was showing you was how to authenticate.
Yeah, I got it. What Tejas said, I got it.
Yeah. So that's authentication. Registering the application, yeah, you can create an application, but in any environment, right, especially Shell and things like that, they won't let you register an app using PowerShell.
Why
Like
so?
big environments will not let you register applications because everything needs to be documented and there needs to be a ticket against each application that's registered. So it is a different team that registers the application, whereas your team will just use that application to authenticate, the SPN to
Oh,
authenticate.
okay.
yeah. So Piyush, this is the kind of code you can enter to create your app directly
But
from.
yeah, correct. This one, you can use that to create or register your application. You'll have to create, register. You can assign a password. No, sorry, you can create certificates. You would have to upload the certificate. You can set expiration dates. You can do a lot of things using PowerShell.
Okay, got it.
But that'll be jumping the gun, right? Because that is in the how-to session. It's not in the what is session.
All right, yeah, got it.
So I think that's it from my side. And